Okay. We are up to Hayoresh Somech. So yesterday, what we learned was it says Karbonai three times in the parsha of Shlomim, and it's coming to teach us three halachas. Karbonai v'lo carbon chaveroi, you don't make smicha on somebody else's carbon. Karbonai v'lo carbonai v'kechavim, you do not make smicha on the carbon of a goy. And karbonai l'rabbis kol bale carbon l'smicha. Every one of the shutfim in a carbon has to do the smicha. We learned three other things, and that is karbonai v'loy pesach, karbonai v'loy meiser, and karbonai v'loy bechor. And the Gemara said you don't need karbonai for that because you wouldn't be able to know that there should be a chiyuv for smicha on these three karbonos from Shlomim because you don't have a kal v'chomer because Shlomim has a mila that it needs nesachim, tnuvas, chazav, v'shoik. So we used the three karbonos to teach us these three halachos: karbonai v'lo carbon chaver, karbonai v'lo carbon v'kechavim, and karbonai l'rabbis kol bale carbon l'smicha. Hayoresh soimich. But the Yerush, someone's father left over a carbon, there his child who brings the carbon will do smicha. So Tani Rab Chananya Kamei de Rava, Yerush Einay Soimich, not like our Mishnah. Yerush Einay Meimar. A Yerush will not be able to do Tmura. Again, not like our Mishnah. Correct the Gemara, but our Mishnah says otherwise. V'ha anan tanan haYerush Soimich. Right? That's what our Mishnah says. A Yerush will do smicha on the carbon of his parent. He will be responsible, excuse me, to bring the nesachim, and he can do Tamura. He's considered the Bailam. So how could Rab Chananya be Dirish or quote a halacha that contradicts the halacha of our Mishnah? Amalei Ibcha. He said, we have to switch around what I said. And instead of I saying Yerush Ein Soimech, Yerush Ein Meimar, I have to change it. It's Yerush Soimech and Yerush Meimar, just like the Mishnah. Amar Lei, so he told him back. So Rava told him back. Let's see the Bach. Loi Tricha, you don't need to change it. You also have a Tana that you could rely on. Masnis and Mani Rabbi Yehudahi. Our Mishnah could be going according to Rabbi Yehuda, but your Brisa that you quoted could argue on Rabbi Yehuda because we have a Tana that argues on Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, Yerush Soimech, Yerush Meimar, which is our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Yerush Einay Soimech, Yerush Einay Meimar. So Vakert, Masnis and Mani Rabbi Yehuda, your Mishnah, Rabbi Chananya that you quoted could hold like Rabbi Yehuda, who holds Yerush Einay Soimech, Yerush Einay Meimar. My time of Rabbi Yehuda, why would a Yerush not be able to do smicha or tumura? Because it says karbanoi v'loi karbanoviv. So he doesn't use these three karbanos as we just had at the top of our amud. Rather, one of those karbanos, he is being lafuke karbanoviv. Not naturally, we're going to have now trouble. How do you know those other three things? And we're missing one because we're using now one of their karbanos to tell us v'loy karbanoviv. And so karbanon v'loy karbanoviv tells us that you don't make smicha. What about Tamura? The yalav tchilas hakdish, misoif hakdish. Tchilas hakdish means when an animal becomes kaddish. Tamura could be referred to as tchilas hakdish. Soif hakdish is once it's hakdish. What do you do with it? How do you process it? Do you make smicha? So v'yalav tchilas hakdish, we will learn Tamura misoif hakdish from smicha. Ma soif hakdish yorish einay soimech. Why? Because it says karbanoi v'loy karban aviv. Av tchilas hakdish yorish einay meimar. The Rabbanan says you can't use karbanon to say v'loy karban aviv. You know why? Because it says v'im hamer yamir. There's a double lashon in the parsha of Tamura. L'rabbis has a yorish, specifically to tell us that a yorish would be able to do Tamura, and therefore that's the anchor. And v'yalav soif hakdish mitchilas hakdish. We'll learn semicha from Tamura. Matchilas hektish yoresh meimar, because we have a pasuk ve'im hamer yamir. Af soifektish so to smicha yoresh soimech. V'rabbanon. So what are the rabbanon? Hi karbanoi, my avdile. How is he going to learn? How is he going to learn karbanoi if he doesn't use karbanoi to tell us what Rabbi Yehuda does? To tell us karbanoi, you make smicha on his carbon, but not on the carbon of the yoresh. What's he going to do with that karbanai? So tomorrow we learned it already at the top of the Amid what the Rabbanan uses karbanai for. It's karbanai v'lo karbanai v'gechavim, karbanai v'lo karban chaveiroi, and karbanai l'rabbis kol balei karban l'tzmicha. It's Rabbi Yehuda who has a problem. Rabbi Yehuda l'rabbis kol balei karban l'tzmicha leslie. He only has two available because he used up one to exclude the carbon of a Yerush. So he will have to argue with the third halacha of kol balei carbon l'smicha, and he holds not every single owner of the carbon has to do smicha. As long as one owner of the carbon does smicha for everybody else, that will be adequate. That's one option for Rabbi Yehuda. The inami, or you could say he learns all four things from these three karbanos. You know why? Because oived kechavim v'chaveroi mechad kra nafka. He learns oived kechavim and his chaver from one. Why? They're both not yours. So therefore, v'tarvayim mahaytaima who the smicha b'baylam, and they both share the same reason. The oived kechavim is not the baylam for you, and your chaver is not the baylam. So therefore, I only need one karbonai for oived kechavim and for chaveroi. The second carbonai, I only need one carbonai for carbon chaveri. Second carbonai would be for veloy carbon yerish, and the third carbonai will be the l'rabbis kol balei carbon l'smicha. So once I can learn two halachas from one carbonai of carbon chaveri, ayasru latrei kroi. He has two extra carbonais. Chad carbonai veloy carbon aviv the l'rabbis kol balei carbon l'smicha. Frek Gemara. Okay, now we've sorted out who holds what. You learn from Karbonai. But what about the extra ribui by Tamura to say that a Yerush does make Tamura? Rabbi Yehuda, hi, Hamer, Yamer, my Ovidlei. So Tamura, mi boyalei l'rabbis eis Isha. To tell us that an Isha can also do Tamura. The Tanya, lefi shekala inyan kulei. Since the whole parsha of Tamura is all presented by the Torah in male tense, so I would think that maybe it doesn't apply to a woman. Therefore, it says, Hamar Yomer, to say even a woman can make Tamura. Ma soifenu l'rabbis is a isha, Talmud loymar, Hamer Yomer. Rabbanan, how does the Rabbanan know that the parsha of Tamura applies to women? Darshi me ve'im, from the extra vav. Rabbi Yehuda ve'im loy darish. So here, David Zolti is going to ask me, most of the tzivuyim in the Torah are al b'lashon zachar, yet many of them do apply to women. So that's Tosfos' kasha.
I wasn't going to ask that.
Lefi shechala inyan kula einim medaber al b'lashon zachar. Bekama mekaymos boi kra l'mayit isha. There's many places where it's understood that a woman is included, and we don't need a pasuk to be marba. Fakert, we would need a pasuk to say they're not included. They're also the whole pasuk is b'lashon zachar, yet we still needed an extra pasuk to say that it doesn't apply to women. V'chein dignei v'asoi v'loy b'gnei v'asa af al pi shekol ha'inyan einem medaber kulei ela b'lashon zachar mishum dehishva akasav isha leish l'chalon shabbatayra. So why over here do we need a special pasuk by Tamura to include a woman? Elahach ahainu taima. If it's a davar shaba oynish, tishava bein b'yachid bein b'tzibur, that's where it's understood that a woman would be included. Even the oynish she'enay shava b'chalu, it's not shava b'chalu. Why? The Tanan we learned eina tzibur v'ashutfin oisin tamura. A tzibur or shutfin don't make Tamura. It could only be made if there's a single owner. So we're excluding some items. Therefore, Isha Nami ki avra loy silki. You would have thought she doesn't get malchus. Kamash malon. So by Tamur, there would be a special reason why we would think no, because Shutfim and Etzibur aren't included either. So that's Tosus' distinction. So it's not it's a little bit complex because we know not if it's allowed that we assume everybody is included. Avada Noshim are included, but once we see that there are exceptions, now we need a right that a woman is included. Everybody has a chiyuv to make smicha on their carbon, and they make smicha. Visuma v'oivid kachavim v'o'eved v'ashliach v'o'isha. And we're going to see in the Gemara the makor for each one of these items. Usmicha shiyare mitzvah. Smicha is called shiyare mitzvah. What does shiyare mitzvah mean? Zogt Rashi. It's Rashi on top, I believe, says shiyare mitzvah. No, there's no shiyare mitzvah here. There's no Rashi. Well, what Gemara is going to tell us, what it means is it's like an extra part to the mitzvah, but if you don't do it, it will still be kosher. Yeah, there is. Here's it. Ain't ma'akiv kapara. It's not ma'akiv the kapara. It's in the Rashi Ksaviyat. I just couldn't place my eyes on it now. Okay, weiter. Where do you make the smicha? Ala roish, on the head of the animal, and you need to use bevei yadayim with two hands. And where v'mokem shesoimchin sheichtin, the place where they do the smicha, they do the shechita. V'tekev l'smicha shechita. And right after they do the smicha, they have to do the shechita. Therefore, you cannot relocate the animal. Moti's making a bris this morning. So there's a famous corny joke that people ask, "Where's the bris?" So the guy answers, "What do you mean where the bris? This is where it always is. Where else do they make it? It's not on his ear, right?" That's like the corny joke they make. We're going to actually have a machlokes. What does uvemokim shesoimchin shoichten means? What? Does it mean if a mokem shesoimchin shoichten, the same place on the head where you make the shechita, that's where you make the smicha, which is not true, right? Because the shechita is ala tzavar, right? The Gemara is going to end up saying if a mokem shesoimchin shoichten means in the place of the azara, you don't relocate the animal. So that's mamish that corny joke. So the B'li strikes again even on a personal ifin. I understand why they don't do smicha. The law b'nei deya. They're not b'nei deya. However, oivid kachavim nami a goy as well, because we have a diuk b'nei Yisrael soimchin. It says b'nei Yisrael. It says daber al b'nei Yisrael, right? B'nei Yisrael soimchin ve'ein oivid kachavim soimchin. Elasuma my time aloi. Why would the suma not be mechuyev in the mitzvah of smicha? Rab Chisda v'Rab Yitzchak bar Avdimai. Chad Amar Asya Smicha Mizikne Eda. One tells us that where do we know the halachas of smicha? From one of the primary places where we know smicha from, which is Parhel and Davishal Tzibur. That's the one example that everybody agrees. A carbon simur does smicha, and there it's the Zikne Eda, and the Zikne Eda have to be able to see. They can't have a mum. Lav sumen ninu. The Ziknei Eda are not sumen. Kedamrim is Sanhedrin. Makish rivim v'lenagoyim v'oiche bezdin minukin betzedek. Just like they have to be squeaky clean in their morality, kach minukim mimum. They have to be perfectly healthy, and therefore they wouldn't do smicha. V'chad amar asyo smicha my oilas re'iyah. Oilas re'iyah is a smicha where it's a carbon that you're mechuyev to bring. The oilish riyah you're mechuyev to bring, right? And over there, but the oilish riyah the boy smicha, and hasam suman loy by the oilish riyah it says yirah. You have to be seen, you have to see, and therefore a blind person is not mechuyev in oilish riyah. And since we're learning smicha from oilish riyah, that's why we a blind person won't bring it. My time if you learn it from Eilish Re'iyah, why couldn't they have learned it from Ziknei Eda? Why didn't they say that is the Makar? Zok to Gemara, because done in Yachid, we want to learn a carbon Yachid from a carbon Yachid. They ain't done in Yachid Mitzibur. We're not going to want to learn the halacha of Smicha by a carbon Yachid from the halacha of Semicha by the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur, which is a rabbin. So Gemara, what about the other way? If you learn it from Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur, my time Elo Yalach Ma'elos Riyah, why couldn't he learn it from Ma'elos Riyah? Because he holds done in Midi Diksiv by Semicha Begufei, Midi Diksiv by Semicha Begufei. Shalomim, it says in the Torah Mufurish, it says Allah of Semicha. We want to learn it from another place where Semicha is done, but it's first mentioned in the Torah, Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur. Afuk Eilish Riyah, how could we learn Semicha from Eilish Riyah? Till he gufa my Eilish Nedava Gomer. We only know that Eilish Riyah you do Semicha from Eilish Nedava. How do we know that? The Tani Tana Kamedi Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Abba. It says Vayakrev es ha'oila vayaseh kamishpat. What does that mean? Kamishpat. Kamishpat oilas nedova, like the way in oilas nedova is treated with smicha. Limeid al oilas chayva sheteuna smicha. That teaches us that the oilas chayva is teuna smicha. So ultimately, you don't even know beferish by re'iyah that it needs smicha, and therefore we only know it because we learn it from vayaseh kamishpat oilas nedova. Okay, gewaltig. But I'll call upon him either way. We have a limud either from Ziknei Ha'eda or from Oilas Re'iyah that that a suma does not make semicha. Okay, gewaltig. Sagt der Heilige Gemara weiter. Ve'ha'eved ve'ashliach ve'isha, they also don't do semicha. Tanu Rabbanan. It says Yodoi, v'samach es Yodoi al Rosh Ha'ila, Yodoi v'lo yad Avdoi, Yodoi v'lo yad Shluchoi, Yodoi v'lo yad Ishtoi. There's 3 extra words Yodoi in the parish of Shlomim, and each one we learn for that. Frek Gemara Kol Hani Lomali. Why couldn't I learn them all out of one Yodoi? Why did I need 3 times Yodoi? Zakt Gemara Tzricha. Because of Rachman Achad, if we only had one Yadoi, Havamina, I would have said, you know what is excluding? Dafka and Eved, the law of Bar Mitzvahs. He's not a full Bar Mitzvahs, and therefore only the Eved is excluded from the Mitzvah of Smicha. Avol Shliach, although it's not his carbon, but the Bar Mitzvah, he's included in all mitzvahs. Maybe there the Torah says his Smicha will work. We learned it in the Mishnah, but we didn't learn the reason. I would have thought that he could do smicha, so you need a second yodot. V'yashmin hanitarti, which would be Eved, and the shliach, the lav kugufedami. Shliach might be a shliach, but he's not me myself. Aval ishtay kegufedami. Maybe she would be able to do smicha. Emet isamech shricha. So, but we just learned a moment ago that excludes an isha from Tamura and from Smicha. That's a chiyah for her to do Tamura or Smicha, to do Smicha on her own carbon. Now we're talking about her husband's carbon. If the husband appoints his wife to do the Smicha for her, would that be good? From that we know Yadai. No, it wouldn't be good. It has to be him himself. Zok the Gemara Smicha Shiare Mitzvah a famous Gemara. Taner Rabbanon. It says V'samach Yadai v'nirtza. Frank Gemara, what do you mean the semicha is the kapara? V'chi semicha mechaperes v'lo ein kapara ela b'dam. We know that the kapara of the carbon that we're getting from the carbon is affected through the zrikas adam. Shenemer ki adam hu b'nefesh shechaper. Ela loimer loch. It's to tell you. The reason why it says v'nirtza by the v'samach is shem osel semicha shiyari mitzvah. If you treat it like it's second class and you don't do it, ma'il olav akazav kilo lekeeper. The Torah considers it like you didn't do your kapara, but l'maisa v'keeper. L'maisa was mechaper. So it just means the Torah doesn't consider it a mitzvah min hamuvchar, as Rashi says ki'ilu lo keeper min hamuvchar. But the keeper l'maisa kapara al koldahu diksheira b'dam. The kapara b'dam. The kapara comes through the dam. The Tanya got b'tenufa kai gavna. We actually had a similar expression by tenufa. It says l'tnufa lechaper. So the Bryce asks, "V'chi tnufa mechaperes v'lo ein kapar ela b'dam shenemar ki hadam hu b'nefesh yichaper ela loimelach shemazal l'tnufa shiari mitzvah." And you didn't do it. Ma'ila olav akos of kilo lekiper It's not min hamuchor, but the keeper it will work. Where is the smicha done? Al harosh. Tanu rabbanon. Yodoi al harosh v'lo yodoi al tzavar, not on the neck. Yodoi al harosh v'lo yodoi al gabayim. Gabayim, Rashi says, are gaboy shalbeimach, the back of the animal. Yodoi al harosh v'lo yodoi al chaza, not on the chest of the animal. Kol hani lamali. Why do we need all these diyukim? If we only had one, lamut tzavar, that would exclude semicha on the neck. That's not even on the right side of the animal. It's on the other. It's on the underside. The lekoiba de roisha. It's not even on the same side as the head. Avogabay, but his back. The koila de roisha. It's basically the same surface. It's just more to the back of the animal. Emoloi. Maybe there the smicha will be good. Shricha, you need a pasuk to tell us that smicha on the back doesn't work. The loy is rabbi letnufa, because you don't; those aren't included in the mitzvah of tnufa. Avochaza, we know the chaza v'shoik is where they do the tnufa. Avochaza the rabbi letnufa emaloy. Maybe that would also be a place where smicha can be done. Shricha. So that's why you need all these psukim to exclude the tzaver, exclude the gav, and exclude the chaza. Ibailu. What about if you put it on the side of the head? Not on the top of the head, but on the side of the head. Tashma, the Tanya Abba Biro Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Omer, Yodai al Roishai, Velo Yodai al Stodin, he Befeir said that Stodin is not a good place to do smicha. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah, Matlis Mao Shetepels. Could a shmata be a chatzitza? Does the hands have to be directly on the head of the animal? Or could he wear gloves? Or could he put a shemat on? Tashma, so you see a shmata being chaytez would be a problem. You need to use two hands when you do smicha. But it says, but it's spelled without the second yud, meaning ksiv yadoi. Uksiv shtei. It says two, but it says yadoi. That's a little bit funny because if we know it's two, it says shtei, but yadoi is written in singular tense. How do we process that? Zebanoav. This teaches us kol mokaim in the Torah shenemar yadoi harei kan shtayim. It always means two hands. Unless the Torah says yodai achas, by default yodai means two hands. Why? Because of one place in the Torah where it said shtei yodai by smicha. All in all, Rabbi Lozer heard this over from his Rebbe Rish Lakish, and the Amr la Shmaitza bevei midrasha v'lo Amra mishmei de Rish Lakish. But he didn't say it over in the name of Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish was not happy with that. Shomer Rish Lakish ve'ikbit. You heard this halacha from me. You should say it over for me. And what he decided to do, Rish Lakish, is he showed Rabbi Lazar that you yourself don't even understand my halacha. And he asked the kasha on the halacha that Rabbi Lazar said over in his name. So many places in the Torah it says Yodav with a Vav. What for? If automatically it means two. Lamali, Lamichtav Yodav, and all these different parashas in the Torah. Actually, Esrim Vidal Yadav. He found 24 places where it says Yadav. And based on what you're saying, Rabbi Eliezer, it wouldn't be necessary. Yadav Tavienu, Yadav Ravloi, Sikel Es Yadav, Ishtik. Rabbi Eliezer was quiet. You have a good point? I don't know. Lavasa de Nachdaite, after Rish Lakish calmed down, and he was no longer upset with Rabbi Eliezer for saying over the memor, not in the name of Rish Lakish, Amalei, my time Eloi. My time Eloi Tameli, why didn't you tell me? Yodov de Semicha ka Amri. It's when I said Yodov, whenever it says Yodoi, it means two hands. That's only Lagabi, the parsha of Semicha. Whenever the Torah mentions anything about the Samach Yodoi, there it means both hands. But from that Bininav, you don't learn that anywhere in the Torah where it says Yodov, it means two things. So I'm just trying to get pshat in the taich. My time Eloi Taimali. I'm not sure if that's Rish Lakish talking or is that Rabbi Eliezer talking. Rish Lakish. So what do you mean my time Eloi Taimali? Or why didn't you say it over properly? I mean, Yod of the Smicha. I meant Yod of the Smicha. You said it over wrong. Zok Gemara b'smicha namiksiv vayismach es yadav olav vayitzaveu, where I believe Moshe Rabbeinu was giving over the malchus to Yeshua. Zok Gemara smicha de behema ka'amri. I'm talking about when you're talking about smicha de behema, even if it says yadah, it means two hands. Uvamakam shesoimchin sheichtin, and then the Mishnah says takef l'smicha shchita. Frankly, my kamar. What are we saying? Which Rashi says the listening takef l'smicha shchita. I could have said that. V'no yodana devamakam shesoimchin sheichtin. You have to shecht in the same place that you do smicha because you're doing it right away. If you should take off the semicha shchita, you can't move it. But if you look at the Rashi on top, look what he says. My kamer b'mokem shesoimchem sheichtin. Kloimar the la'achar shesoimchem la'al teshoichtin should take off the semicha shchita. The achim is tabishaber. In yinacher, my kamer the mashmal the ba'oisamokem b'behema shesoimchem sham sheichtin. But lo ain't semicha b'tzaber. How can you say that? So that's what I was referring to in the first shot of Rashi. In the second shot of the first Rashi, he has that happening. But at the end of the day, why do you need it? You know why you have to shecht in the same place where they do the smicha? Because shetekef l'smicha shchita. Because they have to shecht right away. So they don't have room, they don't have time to move it around. And therefore the two halachas are totally zebazeh. The reason why b'makom shesoimchem sheichtin is because takef l'smicha shchita. Remember b'smicha b'tnufa, we had this mishnah before. There are chumash and smicha over tnufa, over tnufa b'smicha. She'echad meinif l'chol hachaverim. If there's multiple partners, only one has to do tnufa. But ve'ein echad soimich l'chol hachaverim, multiple partners each have to do smicha. Remember b'tnufa, she'tnufa neheges b'karbonas ha'yachid uve karbonas ha'tzibur. The mitzvah of tnufa applies in certain cases to the carbon of a yachid as well as to the carbon of a tzibur, like the shtei alechem, b'chayim. Sometimes you do tenufa even when the animal's alive. Again, that's by the shtei alechem. Uvishchutin, as well as after the animal is shechted, again by the shtei alechem. Uvedavish yesh beruachayim. You could only do semicha. You could only do smicha on an animal. You don't make it on a non-alive thing. You don't do it on bread. So uvedavar sheyesh beruachayim, uvedavar shein beruachayim, mashengen besmicha, you only do it on a live animal. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll be mamshich be'ez Hashem tomorrow. We'll do Taf Tzaddik Daled.